Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. For those tuning in on the simulcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X, we're glad you all could be with us today. Going to bring in our friends over on IG so they can be a part of our chat. And last but certainly not least, going to connect with our friends over on Amazon Live. Have another great guest that's joining us today for the very first time for our show to talk to us not only about his new book, but also the reflection of his life and also the importance of all the things that really matters. If you guys are looking for a great read, it is National Reading Month. So I hope you guys will be able to add this book to your reading list. We're now live on the Amazon Live platform with Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new to us on Amazon, make sure you guys click that follow button, either here in this corner or down below. You also see the new book by Jonathan Tepper. As you guys can see there, it's called Shooting Up. I'm going to talk to Jonathan not only about the reflections of his life and his own career, but also what it's been like for him to see not only how the things that he was able to experience have impacted the way he lives today, but also the lessons for all of us too. If you guys have not gotten your copy, now's the perfect time. Jonathan, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
So the pleasure is definitely all mine. Congratulations to you on the book, Jonathan. I want to begin with the big picture. I mean, you were known, of course, for being able to share information outside of your own personal life. What was it like for you to kind of turn the camera inward and reflect on the making of yourself?
So previously, I had written books on economics and
Mhm.
investing, and in those types of books, you tell the reader exactly what it is they need to know. So you're telling the reader. And even though a memoir is true and should be true, it has to be much more novelistic in the approach, which is you sort of the rule of good writing is show, don't tell. And so you have to. I had to write it very differently, but ultimately, the financial writing, it's about abstract ideas or about markets. This is much more personal, and so I think I had to learn to be honest in terms of you could easily leave out things that make you look bad or your family or loved ones. And ultimately I realized that if it's done with love and it's done, to render people as more full and complex human beings, which people are, then, they appreciate it. And so even, all of my friends and family absolutely love the book, even though, it's a warts and all for all of us.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating, Jonathan. You and I have never spoken before, but I think anyone who reads Shooting Up will not only be able to get an idea of where some of your qualities come from when it comes to compassion, empathy, the way you look at the world outside of just yourself. And I think all of us know what it's like sometimes to get so singular in our focus. You grew up in a family, Jonathan, and what we're able to see in the book early on, that was really about thinking about what we can do for others, how we can make a difference in the lives of others. How much looking back at it would you say that did influence who you became?
So I think it had an absolutely enormous impact. My parents, were Christian missionaries who moved to Spain in 1983 and settled in a neighborhood, San Blas, which had the highest rate of heroin use in Europe at the time. So the need in the streets was just overwhelming, and they started helping send young men and women to rehab programs around Spain because there wasn't very much in Madrid. And the need was so great that they decided they needed to start a drug rehab center. And from one addict in 1985, it's now been going for 40 years. But I basically grew up as a kid, sort of going out and handing out flyers to heroin addicts in the street, and then watching them as they transform their lives. And so I think it's one thing to have whether it's religious beliefs or even beliefs about how humans should behave. It's quite
Right.
another thing to see it in action, and I really admire my parents in terms of the love and the compassion that they showed everyone day to day.
And Jonathan, I have to say, in reading Shooting Up, the other thing that comes through, and I think all of us, if we think about our lives, even on the micro level, right, we all want to think that we're able to do something that matters, something that makes a difference. But then there's the other side of that. And this is what I really appreciated about the book Shooting Up, that you're not going to be able to save everyone, right? Not every, even with the best of intentions, things are not going to always go well. What was that like for you to make sense of growing up?
So I think that particularly when you're young, I think you have a sense of innocence about yourself and the world, and that you can help everyone, or indeed the people doing the helping are sort of flawless heroes, and you adore your mom and dad, and so I think as the book goes on, I try to. It starts out as very much an innocent adventure, and as you get towards the end of the book, there's as should happen in a coming of age story, there is this sort of maturation and growth and realizing that not only can you not save everyone, but there are costs to sacrifice and to helping others. And ultimately, when you are dealing with grief or trauma and addiction or whatever it might be, you can repair things, but the damage is never fully undone, and
Right.
and that comes out as a theme in the book too.
Yeah, so true. The other thing that your parents showed you, other than the importance, I think, of a selfless spirit and the desire to help, you also got your love of books. And there was one passage, Jonathan, and I mentioned it to you before we went live here, that I read that really I think sums this up really well. And I love the fact that this is something that's interesting as someone who's been a lifelong reader for myself. My family didn't share that interest, but they definitely supported it. You said this in the book when it came to your family and books, Jonathan. While a theological treatise bored me, we loved an engrossing story, the kind you couldn't put down at night. We read Robin Crusoe, The Prince and the Pauper, The Odyssey, The Iliad, and countless more. Every night we were eager to take our baths, brush our teeth, and hear what might happen. And then you go on to say this: books were not dead. Reading breathed life into them. Reading was powerful and stirred such intense feelings. A great book had the power to change us and shake us to our core. I thought that was so fascinating in reading your own book now, Jonathan, that you have now been able to write a book that will be able to make people feel and I think reflect. How does that feel to know that what books did for you is now what your book can do for others?
No, thank you. I believe it or not, I actually hadn't given that too much thought, but I do hope that there's someone out there, particularly if they're younger, that might read the book and it might inspire them and they might one day write their own book. But I
Mhm.
do feel that as a reader, and obviously this is a memoir, which is true, but I think the beauty of books is whether it's true or not, that it can evoke emotions that can make us more empathetic, that can bring us to not only worlds we've never been to, but emotions that we haven't fully felt before. And I can still remember, and I have it in the book, my brothers and I crying when Roland and Oliver die at the end of the Song of Roland.
Mhm.
And but there are these books that they make you more human. And there's a beautiful quote from Roger Ebert, and he said that he thought that movies were an empathy machine. And I think that certainly books, great books, are empathy machines.
Yeah. You hello to you, the crazy Kurt girl over there on IG. Hello to you, Hookshot Charlie. Glad you could join us. I want to reset real quick and say, for those who are just tuning in, welcome. You're watching Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live, but we are simulcasting this across social media on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and on Instagram. Jonathan Tepper is joining us today. He's celebrating his new book that really is such a thoughtful read. It's called Shooting Up. And as the title alludes to, one of the things, of course, that happens, and you alluded to this as well, Jonathan, that of course the work that your parents were involved in was really trying to help those who had addiction. And one of the things that we also read in the book, of course, because of the time frame, is the impact of the AIDS epidemic. And I think it's so interesting because you allude to this in the latter part of the book that yes, there's been advancements there, but AIDS is still very much still here. But what was it like for you to think about not only the evolution of AIDS in your own lifetime, Jonathan, and to think about the progress that has been made?
Sure. So I remember the first time I found out about AIDS was in 1985, and I was 9 at the time, and my parents had called us into the living room, and I thought they were going to punish us for coming home late, but they were actually telling us about the virus, and I didn't really think very much about it. It was only when the first addicts started dying because they'd almost all shared needles, and through that shared blood. And then almost all the early addicts in the program were like older brothers and sisters to me, and my brothers started dying. And the peak of deaths from AIDS in Spain was 94, 95. And in 1985, that was when the cocktail of drugs, so the highly active antiretroviral therapy came out. And before that, AIDS was a death sentence. Basically, like, you were going to die. It was just a question of when, if you were HIV positive. After that, it became chronic but treatable. And we lost dozens and dozens of close friends. Very, very close. Like Raul, the first addict, was like our older brother. And it's extraordinary that the people who didn't die before 1995, they're often now still alive, able to see their kids grow up, in many cases, see their grandkids. And a lot of the leaders, if not most of the leaders in the drug rehab center today, are HIV positive, but are living and helping other people. And so, it's
Mm.
a wonder to see the advancement of science. But
Yeah,
the book is a tribute to, the many friends that we did lose.
right. And I think too, this book, you and I talked briefly about this, Jonathan, before we went live here. This book also talks about that life happens to us all, and there's that scripture that tells us that time and unforeseen occurrences befall us all, and you experience that in your own life. And I think there are a lot of people. Only reason why I'm bringing this up, Jonathan, is because I think a lot of times there are people who see themselves as good people that bad things happen to, and the question of the why always comes up. You experience tragedy as you chronicle yourself in the book, and you quote yourself as asking why God, allowed this to happen. What was that like for you to think about? I mean, not only, of course, the great work that you saw being done around you, but also tragedies that did happen to you personally and how you responded to it.
Certainly. So, while many were dying in the program, from AIDS, my family itself, we had a tragic accident when we were going back to the United States to visit churches, which my parents did every 4 years to, let them know about what they were doing, because they're missionaries. And my youngest brother, Timothy, died in a car accident. It was a week before he turned 10. I was 15 at the time. And what I realized through that was that, obviously, like none of us are spared pain or sickness or death. And, you can respond in different ways to it, where you can either harden your heart or become bitter. I think that my brother's death brought us much closer to the men and women and the families and the drug rehab center and the church. That many of the parents had seen their sons and daughters die of overdoses or were HIV positive. And I think while it was very difficult, for my family, and it marked my life, there's only a before and after. I think the response was to have more love and compassion for others.
Yeah. And it was so powerful to me to read, Jonathan, as you chronicle in the book, after the tragic incident, about your father, being able to pray and to be able to consider whether, where Timothy would be able to pull through or not, being able to deal with that. How much does that help you in life today? Because I think a lot of times things that we go through and we experience, and we see how we're been able to, to move forward, have helped us as other things happen. How did that? How you were able to deal with that tragedy? How does it help you in dealing with other things that happen in life?
Certainly, and I wouldn't like wish tragedy on anyone. I certainly don't wish it on myself. But I think that with the added perspective of time, I realized that it certainly did make me realize that none of our days are guaranteed, and we have to live a life of quality over quantity. And it certainly made me much more sort of serious. I channeled sort of the sadness or pain or angst into my studies and into trying to work with my parents. And I certainly think that I probably wouldn't have done or achieved many of the things that I've gone on and done if that hadn't happened.
Yeah.
But it's one of these things that when you're 15, it completely changes your life.
Yeah. So big picture then, looking back at now, shooting up, getting rave reviews, rightly so, because it is such a powerful read. How did you see this book being able to be of service to others? Yes, you're able to chronicle the great work that your parents have been able to do, the examples of resilience, but also how it shows that we can all be able to make an impact. For the reader, though, when you decided to publish it, Jonathan, what was your hope that the reader would take away from it for themselves?
Certainly, and it's an extraordinary and unusual childhood growing up with heroin addicts and AIDS, and obviously, if that's all it is, then it's not a very interesting one because what does that tell others? What I really tried to do and wanted to do is to try to tell a universal story of love and loss, and I think that everyone has family members or friends that they've lost, and one of the books that my parents read to us after my brother died, and that I reread over the years, was A Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis. And I think that I hope that my book leads those who are suffering to know that they're not alone,
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the powers of reading, is that we read to know that we're not alone.
Right.
And I hope that it leads towards more love and empathy, and to the extent that people haven't grown up around heroin addicts or people with AIDS, or and the category is much broader, but that these sort of other people are just like us, and
Yeah.
deserving of love, and capable of change.
I love that. Cool, Artie. Hello to you over there on IG. Good to be able to see you. Ahmad, hello to you as well. It's really a powerful book, Jonathan. I'm so glad you and I have this opportunity to be able to talk about it. For our audience that's joining us on the Amazon side, you welcome me to get your own copy of Shooting Up Here. For those of you joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, there's a link that will bring you guys over to Amazon. For those joining us on X, you'll find it in the comment section. And on IG, I'll put it in my stories. Again, everyone, Jonathan Tepper has been our guest. His book is called Shooting Up. It's a powerful look not only at his life and experiences, but also the lessons I think all of us can be able to learn from. Jonathan, how can our audience stay connected with you?
Sure. So I'm not really on social media because my job, I run an investment fund. And so
Yeah.
my clients want to know I'm looking after their money. But
Yeah.
I am on LinkedIn. I do have a personal website, jonathan-tepper.com. And so I'm very happy to interact with people there. I do so, but I've generally stayed off social media.
Social media. Yeah. Well, Jonathan, really appreciate the time and looking forward to our next conversation together.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed it.
All right. And we want to thank our friend Leslie at Open Book for setting this up for us today. And thank all of you for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.